Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at flyfisherinsiderpodcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Dan Moyer. Dan Moyer is the owner and developer for GoCatcha. GoCatcha is an app-based Playbook company that gives anglers more information and tools from gurus on how to fish certain rivers and waters. Dan, I know that's not the most accurate, detailed intro, but it's going to give everybody an idea of what's going on. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Got to jump off somewhere, so I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you and come on the podcast. And hey, just a quick shout out to you for all that you've built and the many fantastic guests that you continue and have had on the podcast over the years. So great to be on.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that, Dan. Thank you very much. So, why change something that's not broken here? So Dan, I usually ask guests basically to start with how they got into fly fishing and, where the journey kind of began for them, just to paint a picture. So if you could tell us that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually love kind of flashing back to different points in my life where fishing was a part of it. So absolutely, I can kind of take you back. So I grew up in Springfield, Ohio, and live in Indiana now, but grew up in Ohio. And I was your classic kid, spin fish, conventional tackle fishing kid. So hitting farm ponds and retention ponds in the neighborhood, the old Springfield Lagoon, and also had an older friend of mine who was a real outdoorsman, like a Bear Grylls kind of guy. And he really kind of showed me the ropes and just kind of helped me appreciate and have a ton of fun with just the sport of fishing overall as a kid. So grew up doing that, middle school, elementary school. And then as you get into high school and college and post-college, actually kind of went away from fishing, was into some other different things, mountain biking, camping, various outdoor adventures. And after college, I moved to Colorado, and I went to work in the early 2000s with a company, and two of my colleagues were just really fantastic, fly anglers. And I kept hearing them in the office talking about, they'd go out on the weekend and do this and do that. And I'm like, wait a second, fishing is something I know I enjoyed back in the day, but this fly fishing that these guys are describing is really intriguing to me. So kept picking those guys' brains, and they ultimately kind of helped one of the fellas, Dave McNeil's his name, load me some gear, gave me kind of some quick tips, and off I went to kind of dive in and do some fly angling myself and just kind of get started with it. And that's where it really kind of took hold. And here we are 20 years later, where it's just my passion and my thing that I do to get away and just, go enjoy the outdoors and do it as much as I can now personally. So
I love how, fly fishing, you mentioned you kind of got out of it, but then it always sucks us back in, doesn't it? So I've spoken to so many guests, and they all have that same story. Like, I got out of it, but then I got back into it. So really cool.
No doubt it. Well, and I think I've heard this from some of your other guests as well, is usually there's a person, and for me it was a couple of people that are like a catalyst to kind of give you that nudge or get you, in my case, acquainted for the first time with fly fishing. I was familiar with fishing, as I mentioned, growing up as a kid, but it's those couple of people that they end up being like catalysts or influencers in your life, and they get you going. And sometimes they don't even know how they influence you, but all these years later, it was those two guys I worked with in Denver, 20 years ago, and really unlock something that I'll do absolutely consistently for the rest of my life. I have no doubt.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. So then you mentioned basically, at the beginning of this, I mentioned about GoCatcha, or GoCatcha. What I'm going to do with this is ask you, how did you get into the tech side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned with my day job that I'm in, I've been involved in technology, digital products, platforms, software, the whole gamut for the better part of 20 plus years now, going back to the late 90s call it the dawn of the internet. So I've always been around that professionally. That's been my career path. I've been in product management, program management, project management, this, that, and the other. And so for me, when I started to go on my fly fishing journey, and I would be out looking for information about a particular fishery, and for me, finding knowledge helps build confidence, and then I feel like I fly fish better, maybe like most people when you have confidence when you're going to the water. And frankly, I was having to go, I just felt like here, there, everywhere on the internet. And, the credibility of certain information and how up to date it was or wasn't, I just had to stitch and cobble all this stuff together. And then I kind of stepped back and said, hey, I know there's people out there, we call them gurus, that have just incredible knowledge of a fishery. And what if we could take the knowledge that's in these folks' heads and put it into a digital and online format, which is where we came up with the concept of a playbook for a fishery. And I kind of raised my own hand and said to myself, I'd pay money for that. I'd subscribe to that. Then I don't have to spend hour after hour stitching together information. And that's really where the idea for GoCatcha was born. And, off we went. I happened to be fortunate enough to meet my co-founder on the river here in Zionsville, Indiana, where I live and where we're based out of. And he is a true guru for a number of different fisheries. And I used to ask him all these questions. I need to get inside your head, and we need to get you to write that down, in our case, in the form of a playbook. And that's really actually how the idea formed. And he and I got together and formed a company and brought in another longtime friend to be a co-founder to build the platform. And here we are today with a small handful of playbooks and subscribers, but we're off and running. We know we've got something here, and now through the help of people like you, which have been so gracious to have us on your show, for instance, just to kind of get the word out about what we're doing.
Dan, I think it goes deeper than when you say a fishery, and I really want to focus on that because, I know you're like, oh, the fishery. We're talking a fishery as in like a specific river, correct?
Sure. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. So river, stream, creek. And I think of it as a fishery, just as almost a container to say what those things are. But absolutely, you're right.
Can you provide us like an example for those listeners that are like myself, right? Provide me an example of the playbooks you currently have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take Indiana again, where we're based, as an example. In Indiana, we have just a couple of trout fisheries. One is called the Brookville Tailwater down in Brookville, Indiana. So my co-founder, Todd Settles, his name, is a longtime guru of the Brookville Tailwater. He knows it inside and out, where to fish it, when to fish it, how to fish it, nuances by water conditions, seasonality, just all of the kind of things that you would want. And so, for instance, as we put the company together and put the platform together, he created a playbook for the Brookville Tailwater, that specific fishery. And it really just gives that breakdown, that playbook. And we're not trying to be a real-time fishing report. It's very much like a reference guide, something that you can have with you in your pocket, if you will. We're friendly on any device, whether it's a phone or a tablet, et cetera. And then also, Todd's able to update that playbook along the way. It's like a living, breathing thing. So we've got a handful of subscribers to that playbook. It's a very popular place for people that want to target trout here in Indiana. And it is really, go here, fish it like this, and check the water conditions ahead of time. And if the flows are at this level, here's a great tactic that's going to work better than another. So there's real depth to it and actionable information. It's not, frankly, a bunch of high-level conceptual fluff. It's a playbook. It's always, I keep coming back to it. It's like when you go to that fishery, run this set of plays. And of course, it's going to be up to your skill and your passion and energy that you throw into it. But it just gives you that, that game plan, if you will, to go after that fishery.
I do like it because I know like a lot of, you look at football or hockey or basketball. I mean, all those coaches have a playbook. I mean, high level sports have those playbooks because it's efficient in it, and you know what I mean. It gets results. So with that said, and getting results, and how do you go about choosing your guru, or how does a guru come to you? Like how does that walk us through the process of selecting your guru? Because I mean, I'm not going to bash people, but I'm sure a lot of people out there that aren't gurus think they're gurus.
That is excuse me, I had a sip of water there, and I had a little backflow there. My apologies. Yeah, that's a great question. Great call out. So I think of it in two ways. One is that there's an intentional side to what we're doing, where we're saying, what are some key streams, if you will, fisheries that we want to have represented on the Catcha platform. And then we'll do our diligence, by seeking, whether it's through, local shops or people that are, consistent and credible on social media. And we'll reach out to them and actively introduce them to the platform and encourage them to come on board. The other side of it is just being networked, by other people who know other people. In essence, they're vouching for that credibility and ask for intros there and connect with people that way, which allows us to turn on or spin up a stream playbook based on a guru that finds their way to us, or that we get networked to. I will say, to your question about people that think they're gurus but maybe aren't. I mean, frankly, the proof is in the pudding. So as a guru would put together a playbook, and somebody might look at the contents of that playbook and say, hey, there just doesn't seem like there's enough meat there, so I'm not going to subscribe to that. Or if somebody's subscribing and finding something is just inaccurate, and let's say they reach out to us, then we have a chance to kind of course correct there. But part of it is some solid vetting on our end, but then I think really the market kind of speaks after that.
So what do you do with a guru that isn't solid on that bet? Let's just say.
Yeah, fair question. Thankfully, we haven't encountered that yet. Now, obviously, we're just getting started, so there's just a handful. Now, what I will say I'm doing right now is giving what you and I might think of as quote unquote, some pro tips in creating of a playbook. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when a guru creates a new playbook, we spin up for them a set of best practices sections that we encourage them to write to. So we give them a bit of a template that says, here's really the breadth and depth that we believe is the kind of playbook quality that you need to put together. And as they're working on the playbook, it's by default in edit mode. And so it's ready, then they can hit publish. And what I'm able to do is go in and kind of look at what you could think of as draft playbooks. And then I'll say, hey, let's think about adding some more pictures there or a bit more depth there, trying to put, because I'm the angler customer. I'm like the ideal. I'm an intermediate fly angler. And so playbooks are perfect for me. So we do provide them some, I'll call it some light coaching, behind the scenes would be a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things, and this is where I know a lot of gurus are going to, because this is one of the questions I asked you was, okay, like I'm going to give you all my information about a body of water or something like that. Now, is there going to be an influx of people going and fishing my holes and stuff like that? Because that's a concern that people have, right? And that's a concern that, when you start getting 2,000, 3,000, followers to that playbook on a Saturday, is your hole plugged? So now if you're, say, a guide, can I take my clients down that to my favorite hole, or is it just going to be line after line? Do you know what I mean? So how do you avoid that? Because I know that's where I'm sure a lot of listeners and a lot of guys are sitting there going, okay, I kind of like this, I get it, I have knowledge to do, but I don't want to give away my spots.
Yeah, again, fair question. One of the ways that we try to think about it is just being part of the sharing of knowledge and being inclusive with what we're trying to do as being a part of the fly fishing industry. And I always think back to most of us that are out on the particular fisheries, somebody likely told us about it. And there's just that spirit or that essence of wanting to share knowledge. And so obviously we're going to be drawn to, and I think vice versa, people that are wired that way. And I think people that aren't, again, I respect different points of view and opinions. They're not likely going to be drawn to the guru opportunity. I just think probably about it more broadly in that we have something that can continue to make the folks or help the folks that are involved in fly fishing, the anglers today, better, so they'll stay with it longer, and also flatten learning curves for new anglers so that in generations and decades to come, that we've got a sport that's, as healthy and growing as I feel like it is right now, that we can sustain that. So I'm not sure I've got like a black and white, what I think of as like a great answer to that. It's just, we're going to connect with people that really do enjoy, for the good of the sport, let's say, enjoy, sharing that knowledge, and we'll kind of let the chips fall where they may. But it's a great question. I definitely understand the essence of it.
And you know what, Dan? It's a great answer. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a good answer. It's well-rounded, and you covered exactly what you are. You're trying to grow the industry, and you're trying to pass along that knowledge, right? Which is highly important. I mean, how important is it for your brand, and for you to see the growth of the industry? Is that something that drives your company forward?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be part of an industry that's evolving. I think the industry, from what I can tell, frankly, coming from outside of the industry, I've been an angler for a long time, but the industry itself is new to me. I see an industry that's continuing to become more digitally savvy and oriented, especially if you think about I've got two sons, both of which are digital natives, they often call them, but sort of a younger generation is thinking, I think, more digital first around knowledge. And of course, incredible opportunities on Instagram and Facebook groups and YouTube and a variety of places to get great information. But something like GoCatcha in our playbooks, I think does seem to resonate as well with a younger audience who doesn't want to, have to go there, here, there, and everywhere, to use that example, on the internet to stitch together a bunch of, 8-paragraph, sometimes poorly written and like tightly spaced content out there. They want something that's a little bit more structured and modern in its approach, like we have in the playbook.
Awesome. Dan, I'm going to jump onto the playbook section in a second, but I do want to ask you this. Now, what's the incentive for the gurus? I think you mentioned earlier on that there's like a commission or some kind of payment structure there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is absolutely one of the ways that we believe our model is unique. We have not come across any model that's like this. So the guru receives 60% of the subscription revenue to their playbook. So our playbooks for an angler cost $20 a year to subscribe to a playbook, and 60% of that, so $12 of that, goes back to the guru. So I think about it probably in the context more of like a royalty, but to your point, commission, royalty, et cetera. But there's a really, we think, a great opportunity for gurus. Let's say it's a full-time or a part-time guide, or just somebody like my co-founder, Todd, who's just naturally a guru, to create recurring passive income through their knowledge. And we know that's different. I believe in what I would think of as the power of quality content being worth paying for. And I think anglers are so voracious about their seeking quality content that for a cup of coffee a month, if you think about $20 in a year, that that's a real viable part of what we're doing. So long answer to your short question, but the gurus absolutely earn dollars through their playbooks.
Like, what's the average, like when you guys built the model and everything like that, like what is the average guru kind of bringing in monthly?
Yeah, again, we're just a handful of months into this, but if somebody a guru goes to GoCatcha.com, and we've got a link to say apply to be a guru, we've got a little model there that lays out, let's say that you create a playbook, and over time that playbook's got 1,000 subscribers, and you're earning $12 per playbook, per year. That's $12,000 a year of passive, recurring income. So, my gut, my instinct says that it really depends on the guru. Frankly, some folks have amazing followings out there that you could see them having, hundreds, if not thousands of anglers subscribing to their playbook, and at $12 a subscription on an annual basis, that adds up. It's like the gift that keeps giving, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I definitely like the model myself. That's why we're having this conversation. So, one of the key successes to this, and you mentioned it earlier and talked about some highlights, is how you're marketing this and how online. And you mentioned about the social media as well as the YouTube, all that sort of stuff. I mean, that is really key on your end to make sure that this is getting out there to consumers. Like, how are some of the ways that you guys are doing that? What are some of the challenges you've incurred, while doing that going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one challenge I think that just about any ultimately startup, which is what we are, and we're what's often called like a bootstrap startup, where it's Todd and I, putting our own dollars into the company, is of all the places that you could spend your time, attention, and potentially dollars on marketing. Where do you apply that effort? And so far, I think of a little bit like kind of grassroots, brick by brick. So I've been spending most of our time engaging, whether it's following or liking, commenting, reaching out, DM. Instagram has been really, really good for us. We've been able to connect with and find a handful of gurus through Instagram. So that's a big focus for us. Podcast, and again, so appreciative to be on with you. There's been a handful of podcast folks like yourself that I've connected with, had a chance to be on another podcast recently. That's proving successful. I think in the last week or so, I think I've seen about a dozen or so people come, several of which have subscribed to Playbook, several of which have just signed up, to be on the platform and receive updates, came from a recent podcast episode. So Instagram, podcast, we're not doing anything in the paid ad space right now, through Google or Facebook. That's something that could come in the future. But certainly also word of mouth important. One of the things I believe in the industry and also amongst anglers, especially like locally and regionally, is that folks tend to be, maybe a degree or two of separation. And, part of our responsibility is to provide them a great experience and a great product so that they'll tell, other people about that. So if I were to sum it all up, it's very online focused, Instagram and podcasts in particular, but very, at the moment, very grassroots, kind of very brick by brick, step by step each day.
Love it, man. It's good stuff. Obviously you have an idea of who you kind of want as a guru. Is there anyone out there that, that you can name? Like, hey, like I would love to have, Jeff Hickman or Oliver White. Like who's the ideal guru for, or does it even have to be at that level? Can it be at a lower level?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think of course, folks that have incredible, brands in and of themselves and followings and for good reason are true gurus. We would of course welcome those people with open arms. On the flip side, though, again, I'll just use my co-founder Todd Settle as an example. There are so many, we believe, hidden gem type folks out there that really are guru level knowledge, but just aren't, whether full or part-time guides or like in the industry themselves. So this becomes a really, I think, neat way to unlock all of that knowledge that's out there in the world. So yeah, of course, Oliver White would be a fantastic example of just an incredible name. And there's so many others, but really we're able to, and we do embrace, folks from different aspects, I guess is a good way to think about it.
No, for sure. So, Dan, you've built up something really cool. That's why we're talking. I like it. We're endorsing it. I'm a Stillwater guy. And out here in BC, we do a ton of Stillwaters, and that's sort of my home waters, right? Is there options or is there a platform for us to say be involved with, like, not myself, like, whatever, myself, not myself, someone to be involved, or is there a direction of Stillwater coming up within your playbooks? I know a lot of it is river focused, but not limited to.
Yeah, correct. That's a good way to think about it is, at the moment we're river focused or river oriented, but our platform, a playbook is a playbook. I always say it's digitally, it's bits and bytes, and content is content. So absolutely, if we found a guru for a particular stillwater fishery, or maybe it's a regional set of stillwater fisheries, I think you kind of even described, the area where you live as a bit of a region. We could absolutely embrace that tomorrow on the platform and would. And to me, the key for us, what we're absolutely solely focused on is fly fishing. So I'll be clear about that. But in terms of the kind of fishery, whether it's still water or moving water, we're open to either. Even though so far we've had more of a focus on streams, creeks, rivers, moving water so far.
Dan, you probably made mention of it, but I want to go over it one more time because I know you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago there, just regarding about how you really want to provide a great user experience. Walk me through as a new user how I go about doing this. Okay, like I'm listening to this podcast. The podcast is done. They've hit subscribe to my podcast. Now they're like, hey, I want to go check this out. What do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I just this morning had an example of a new angler who subscribed to the Brookfield Tailwater Playbook yesterday, in fact, and had heard about us on the most recent podcast I was on. And that was the tipping point for him. He'd seen us a little bit on Instagram to go over and check things out a little more deeply, which to me shows the power of podcasts, where you have a chance to tell the story a little more deeply and how that can connect with somebody. But I'm just going to use this fellow's name here generically. So his name is Matt, right? And he lives here in Indiana, heard about us on the podcast. He goes over to GoCatcha.com. And since he fishes mostly in Indiana, and he's actually new to fly fishing, and so that's why I think he was drawn to what we're doing as well. And he browsed in Indiana under our shop stream playbook section to Indiana, saw that we had at the moment the Brookfield Tailwater. And when he goes to that playbook, and he hasn't subscribed yet, when he goes to the playbook, he sees a profile of the guru. So he sees Todd and Todd's background. Think about like Todd's credentials as a guru.
Yeah.
And then he sees an outline of the sections, not all the content, but the sections that are in that playbook. So he can see, wow, when I subscribe to this, I'm going to get, the better part of, in this case, we call it 18 or 20 pages of meaningful content. But he can see the sections and get a sense of it. And then he makes the decision to subscribe. And at that point, he signs up for Catcha, provides a credit card, because this is a recurring annual subscription. And when he finishes subscribing, then the entire playbook is made available to him and accessible on any device at any time going forward. And that includes any updates that Todd would make to the Brookfield Tailwater playbook as well. So I always think about a playbook as a living, breathing thing. It's whatever it is in that moment. It's not to say Todd won't create a new section or new content in the next week or the next month, and that it just keeps maturing from there. But that's actually the end-to-end experience. And I thought it was interesting that this fellow signed up, because I reached back out to him, which we do with new subscribers, say, how'd you hear about us and what's been your experience so far? And hopefully that paints a pretty clear picture for your listeners.
Oh, absolutely. I do have a question, because you mentioned it. If Todd updates it, does Mike, the guy that just subscribed, does he get a notification of the update?
Yeah, that's actually, it's not something we do right now, but it's one of our next items on the updates we're making to the platform, is in essence a playbook update alert that would come via email. It's a great call out. I was just talking with my co-founder who handles the platform development for us about the importance of that, is to proactively let people know that a playbook they subscribe to has been updated.
So that's one type of user, like you said, someone that's new to fly fishing, right? Who's another user that would benefit from this? I mean, I know where I'm thinking about it, but I just want to see if that was what you guys had in mind.
Yeah, for sure. So we think about our angler users, like I would say, in three different categories. So let's just use Matt, the example there. Matt's the beginner. He's just kind of started out. To me, he's an obvious one. This is about flattening that learning curve, giving more confidence. And then let's take me, for example. So while I've been fly fishing for 20-some years, it's only been in recent years that I've really ramped up my time on the water. So I'm your classic intermediate. I catch fish most times when I go out on most fisheries. I just am constantly learning and kind of making my way through it. So for me, it's a chance to kind of accelerate a place that I'm already in, so I can keep taking things to the next level. And then there's the expert. And one of the things that we like to call out for the expert is we're probably a value if it's new water that they're tackling, where they're going to apply their expertise, but they want that informational edge when they're going to tackle new water. So I think we've got something of value for each of what I think of as the three types: beginner, intermediate, and expert on the angler side. And that was important to us because we're trying to be inclusive here. We're not, while we're making the product exclusively for fly fishing with Catcha, we wanted to make sure that we had something of interest and value for people that are at different stages of their angling journey, so to speak.
Interesting.
I
mean, I'm looking at it like, let's say I was going to, let's use you, for example. Let's say you were going to come up here to British Columbia and you're like, you know what, I got a quick business trip. You're coming up here, but you got that one day. You don't want to hire a guide because you know what you're doing. You got your rod, and you want to fish a specific river that's close by, right? I mean, that's going to take 50% more. By having that $20, you buy the playbook, subscribe to that river. You've just increased your knowledge. You've just reduced, everything. Because it talks about where, what, the timing, all that sort of stuff. That's how I look at it. Like a traveler. I'm going somewhere or a destination where I wasn't going to hire a guide. I mean, you're just you're solving 50% more.
Perfectly said. I think the intersection of what you're describing and what I described is that an informational edge in tackling new water, whether it's in a traveling context or just somebody that's wanting to explore new water more locally and regionally. But you nailed it. And I did want to call out something to tie back to when we were talking earlier about, the kinds of folks that we think are gurus. In our view, if somebody is a part-time or a full-time guide, this is not meant to, in any way, shape, or form, replace or be what I would think of as, competitive to their guide offering. I think it's a fantastic complement or supplement to what they're doing, not just from a passive income standpoint, but let's say a bit of an interesting takeaway after that guiding experience where it's almost like that guru is going to perhaps be with that person, if you will, in their pocket, on their phone going forward. So I think a little bit about a playbook and what we're doing with Catcha as another tool in the tool belt of a guide, let alone a tool for them finding maybe more prospective new guide clients who might first get introduced to them through a playbook and then want to take it to the next level with a half day or a full day or a multi-day guide experience.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I couldn't agree more. I mean, it actually opens up your guiding service to those that might not otherwise know. You know what I mean? Or maybe people are reading about a river. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we think so. We think so. Now, I would say it's a bit of a new way to think about things. Again, there's not something like this out there today. And I'm not saying for a moment that guys don't put themselves out there and share knowledge in the form of, blog posts and on social media. I think those things I appreciate those and I respect those efforts. I think this is probably a way for them to take that to the next level, if you will, because we're kind of providing the structured format of a playbook and this additional income potential, which, gosh, if this year has reminded, any of us of anything beyond, of course, public health and just our own individual health, it's just how important it is to have multiple income streams in some of these different, crazy times that we're living through.
Yeah, for sure. I like how it does provide that residual income or passive income. That's what it's called. You know what, Dan, I want to fast forward. I want to goals. What are your goals going forward? 5-year plan? What do you guys plan to do? Money's no problem and the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, it's taking what we have today and just growing it exponentially. So in the coming years, I look forward to a future on Catcha where there are literally playbooks for fisheries in every state, and even the opportunity just to reach beyond the U.S. Of course, Canada is a natural fit for that. And in essence, a platform in which we've got, hundreds of gurus and tens of thousands of anglers who are subscribing, to one or several playbooks that have created or kind of built out a library of playbooks. And it's taking the essence of what we've created, which, think about us as we're on first base and we're starting to kind of run or walk towards second base, but just to keep, sprinting around those bases. And then, as Todd and I look at it from a company standpoint, we both, have, meaningful, day jobs outside the industry. But for me, as I look ahead, this could become a very interesting kind of endeavor for the next phase of my life and career that way. And I personally get a lot of satisfaction from either working at, or in this case, starting companies that help other people, do things that are important to them and do them better. And I can think no better way to chart my personal course forward than to see GoCatcha, 100 times or 1,000 times bigger than it is now.
Well said. Dan, you guys were you born out of COVID? Do you know what I mean by that? Like, did the company really emerge from the shutdown and COVID?
So I wouldn't say we were born from it, but I would say that interest in folks, getting out, and perhaps some folks getting newly introduced to fly fishing, is something that I absolutely believe is happening in this day and age. And on the flip side, I think folks are having, to watch their dollars more closely than ever. And something like a Playbook that might be an alternative to a larger investment, let's say initially, in saying, well, the only way I could go out and really learn is I've got to go out and do a full or a half-day guided session where maybe it gets them started incrementally in ramping up their knowledge in a more affordable way. So I would say that it's probably amplified just the number of people that are thinking about or going out and fly fishing. I think we're seeing some of that, in all sorts of outdoor endeavors, camping, mountain biking, just hiking, a whole variety of things are being, I think in a positive way, if you look at some silver linings, if there are any in this, just people reconnecting with the outdoors and getting back out there. And ultimately for us, I had one other thought there.
Go ahead. You go ahead, Dan. You go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to, in terms of rewinding a bit, so the concept for GoCatcha, Todd and I put this concept together in our minds going back a couple of years, and then we built the platform and took some time to do that and really prove out the concept, make sure we showed it to people and see if it resonated. And then in 2019, I had a couple of family-related matters take me away from being able to take it to market last year. And to your point around COVID, actually just some additional time, frankly, around home allowed me to actually say, this is the time. Let's go ahead and launch this and get moving and grooving with it and start putting in that time, early mornings, late evenings, weekends to kind of get it going. And frankly, that did occur as pandemic, COVID, et cetera, kicked in there in the March timeframe.
Interesting. Definitely. I'm really finding that more and more online, or the online space within our industry and sport and passion here, like with fly fishing, has exploded due to COVID, and the creativity that people have done during that time with online stuff is just phenomenal. I mean, we're an audio kind of based company as well, and like our numbers went up during COVID, and I mean they've stayed up, which is great. Thank you guys out there. But no doubt. a lot of businesses and people are really getting creative, and I've spoke to so many of them regarding what's kind of happened and transpired in fly tires, selling online flies, and all that sort of stuff. So the way I look at it is it's just another growth within our industry, which is I'm super supportive of. Another tool that's out there for somebody, and you guys are just offering that option, which is, again, we're pretty happy for that. So definitely, Dan, you got lots going on here. We wish you well. I want to ask you, what are some final words before I let you go?
Well, final words. I think first and foremost about this year that we're all living in is that just thoughts going out to people that are struggling in different ways, and just wishing people, good health, and let's, work together and be smart and practical and kind of get through all of what's going on in the world together. So kind of, first things first and big picture, just, wanting to keep, things like that in mind. And then on the GoCatcha front, it is just an open arms, full-throated call out to anybody, anywhere who may be interested in becoming a guru, coming onto the platform. And part of the reason that I really reinforce that is the gurus are what makes this flywheel start spinning, and they're very much the stars of our show. Good people will invest in great content, from really capable gurus. So just call out, go to our website, apply to be a guru, reach out to me directly, etc. Guru, if I were to trumpet that. And then my other thought would be for the angler user side is stop by, just get a sense of what we're up to. It is no cost to sign up to be a Catcha user, and that allows you to stay informed as we add new playbooks and things that may be coming more to your areas or have fisheries that match up with what your interests are. So
awesome, Dan. Where can they stop by?
Yeah, so we are at GoCatcha.com. So GoCatcha.com. And then on Instagram, we are at GoCatcha, and also on Twitter as well at GoCatcha.
Perfect. Dan,
and I just want to say I really embrace anybody that wants to reach out to me directly as well. So my phone, both phone and text, happy to take that anytime, direct messages, email, all that contact information available through Instagram, website, Twitter, etc. So I am accessible to anybody anytime. Love talking about what we're doing and helping add some value to people and helping them fly fish better.
Awesome, man. Well, we like what you're doing as well, and helping people is a great thing. So, Dan, I definitely want to thank you
so much.
Yeah, I want to thank you for being our guest today, and listeners, I want to thank you guys as well. So, I'm going to make sure I put all those details that Dan has talked about and recap of the show within the show notes. So, thank you guys.
That's great. My pleasure, Greg. Thanks again for the opportunity. Be well, and look forward to staying in touch going forward.
No worries. You've been listening to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. If you like this podcast episode, please let us know. Leave a review and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening platform.